Good morning and welcome to the last day of the AGRF. Of course, we have reached over 10,000 virtual participants from over 150 countries. In total, the program will have featured 40 sessions over full days. That is from the 8th to the 11th of September with 9 hours per day, including plenary sessions, thematic platforms, panels, breakout groups, food insights, cultural moments and virtual outings, and of course, networking. What an achievement for a very first virtual summit. Now, Rwanda has been so glad to host you so far, and I hope you have enjoyed our cultural moments to get to know our country, even if you could not come here in person. Now, yesterday, we talked about markets and trade. Today, the focus is on food system. Of course, it is a great theme to integrate everything we have reviewed over the last 3 days. The United Nations will be hosting in 2021 the Food Systems Summit. So, AGRF's discussions on this topic are fundamental ahead of these historic moments. Now, it is my great pleasure to welcome my faithful co-hosts, the 4 members of our Good Morning AGRF team in the morning. Nema, good morning.
Morning, Fiona. You're looking good today.
Thank you. So do you. Ify, good morning.
Good morning, Fiona. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Moshiri, good morning.
Good morning, Fiona. How are you doing this morning?
I'm very good, thank you. And Olivier Mgaramse, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fiona.
Now, Moshiri, I want to start with you. Let's start with you, of course, today. Now, over the week, we had speakers emphasizing on the need to create reliable and resilient systems for the future. In your opinion, where should we start?
Thank you, Fiona. So I'm going to highlight 3 things that I think we should consider as a starting point. Firstly, I think we need to shorten our value chains. And by that, I simply mean we need to reduce the distance from farm to fork. Or simply put again, we need to produce food close to where it is needed. So you know, the theme for this conference has been feeding the cities and how we can also move food from the smallholder farmers from rural areas to cities. But I think also it's time maybe as a way of shortening our value chains where we need to develop our peri-urban agriculture to make sure that we shorten that distance from farm to fork and produce the food close to where it is needed. And there are so many benefits really of shortening our value chains. For example, then it means our consumers will then get fresher and nutritious produce in time. And it also means it reduces food loss because most of the food actually gets wasted and lost due to longer transport and storage periods. So it means we'll reduce food loss, and also that will contribute to a bit more profits to the farmers. Last but not least, it also eliminates the middleman who is always ripping off the farmers' hard work. Because now through digital tools and technology, we can connect farmers directly to consumers, and it means they can get a premium over their produce. And secondly, Fiona, we need to balance, to develop a balance in the development of food crop value chains versus cash crop value chains. Because when you look at it currently, the cash crop value chains are more developed than food crop value chains. And the cash crop value chains are mostly for export. You look at your coffee or cocoa and the like. Because they are for export, their value chains are better developed than the food crops. But the problem we have in Africa at the moment is actually to satisfy our own food demands. Therefore, we need to put more effort into developing food value chains to make sure that we can actually feed our local population with our local produce before we even look at exporting. And we also, in that regard, need to make sure that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is fully implemented and every political leader and business leader commits to its full functioning so that we open up our borders regionally in the continent to make sure that food can actually be traded and move with much ease. And that will obviously result in a reduction in our net import bill that is currently way too high and doesn't reflect the hard work that our farmers are actually putting to produce the food. Third, and lastly, we need to provide adequate financing to develop these value chains. And we also need to make sure that the finances are available to upskill our young people and our farmers so that they can trade, they can rather farm and do business on a competitive basis. And we also need to finance the development of our technology infrastructure, which is currently quite fragmented and not fully developed. So we need financing to that. So those are the three main issues that I would highlight for now, Fiona.
Now, Mashiri, you just mentioned the need for shortening our value chains. Now, what do you think is missing, to make this a reality?
I think first of all, Fiona, we need a harmonized digital and physical infrastructure across the continent. And here you notice I'm talking about both the digital and physical. Yes, the digital to make sure that our data actually is interoperable. We need to make sure that digital platforms that are used, for example, in Kenya, when we extract data from them, their data can also be interoperable with our digital platforms, say in South Africa or in Zimbabwe or elsewhere. So we need to make sure that that infrastructure is developed and it speaks to each other across the continent. But also physically, we know in Africa we've got a challenge, physical infrastructure, where actually the food actually has to be moving from place to place, be it through our borders, through our roads, the energy infrastructure to make sure that our food travels in refrigerated containers. We need that infrastructure to be developed fully. For example, I'll give you an example, Fiona, that current process of developing a platform that enables farmers to connect with potential buyers and other stakeholders through a bidding process where a farmer can actually sell his produce through an auction using a bidding format and make sure that before they even harvest their produce, it already got one or two prospective buyers who are competing against each other to take that produce. And that will make sure we no longer have a problem of moving our food from the farm to the consumers. But also, Fiona, we need knowledge and skills transfer to rural areas because, again, it is from these rural areas where our small farmers are, and they are the backbone of African agriculture. And that knowledge and transfer really needs to, in my view, we need an intergenerational knowledge osmosis. And by that, I mean, young people currently, they speak of we need to use technology on the farms, etc. But they are our parents, if you like, the older generation on the farms who do not know or are savvy. So in as much as we want to implement technology on the farms, we also need to learn from them, and learn from their repository of historical data and knowledge that they've acquired over the years, because they may not be tech savvy, but they hold a valuable repository of knowledge that we need to use before we even start implementing technology. So there's need for that osmosis of intergenerational knowledge to make sure that we can achieve that.
That's very important, Mashiri. But in one sentence, then, what does the future of the African food systems look to you, and why?
Fiona, to me, the future of the African food systems is youth-centric and youth-driven. And the reasons are straightforward. 60% of the African population is under the age of 40. That's a very young continent we are talking about. So anything that is going to be developed needs to have the majority of that component of the population at the center of it. We speak always about technology and the future that it holds actually in the African food system. And we know that young people are the purveyors of technology and digital solutions. And therefore, we need to make sure that if technology is going to have the effect and impact that it potentially has for the future, then young people who are the purveyors of that technology have to be at the center of it. And lastly, Fiona, you realize that according to the World Economic Forum, top 10 of the youngest countries in the world are African. Like top 10 of the youngest countries in the continent, in the world, the whole world, they are African, with Niger and Mali topping up the list. Niger having a median age of 15.2 and Mali a median age of 16.3. That's a really young continent, and we really need to make sure that everything we do is youth-centric because they are the majority demographic.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. It is time for Africans to rise in their food systems, but mostly it has to be led by the young Africans. Now, on the dish of the day, we will be having Chef Ali Mandri talking about cooking and sustainability. He will visit Rwanda to see himself the effects of climate change on farming, and he meets a local farmer who teaches him how to make a popular traditional meal, and this is banana with beans and split green peas. Also, they will explain to him, of course, how sourcing for the ingredients is becoming a challenge due to climate change. So let's take a look.
Here in eastern Kenya, there's been little rain for the last 2 years. With a return to growing sorghum, Joyce is bringing back traditional dishes. Today she is visited by Kenya's celebrity chef Ali Artiste, who wants to learn more about cooking with this little used ingredient.
As a chef, I would say it's easier to cook. It cooks really fast, it's tastier, and it's more healthier than maize because it contains more minerals than maize itself.
Through a government project funded by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, or IFAD, farmers received high-yielding, high-quality varieties of sorghum and mung beans and are learning how to cook with them. So far, 80,000 farmers like Joyce have learnt about more efficient farming practices. No one knows what the future holds, but for now at least, yields are increasing, nutrition is improving, and forgotten recipes like muviku are being enjoyed again.
And now let's call upon my co-hosts, of course, to give you a flavor and of what to expect from this last day of the summit. I'll start off with you, Neema. What sessions do you recommend on this last day of the summit?
Oh, thank you, Fiona. Wow, there's so much to choose from. So starting with the parallel sessions, we have 3 parallel sessions running between 11 and 1 p.m. Central African time. We have the first one on expanding the universe of investment-ready agribusinesses. I think this is really, really good for anyone who wants to go into business because I don't know if you know this, but Africa's agribusiness sector has the potential to grow to $1 trillion in the next 15 years. And this is up from 3 billion. Can you imagine the difference between 3 billion and 1 trillion in just 15 years? There's going to be a lot of opportunities here. So this is going to be an interesting one. Looking, of course, at serving the urban centers and the population growth that's driven by urban centers. The second breakout session is going to be looking at accelerating growth, sustainability, and inclusivity of digital agricultural solutions. Now, this is the one I personally plan to attend because it is actually the panel is actually, full of big shots. We have Paula Ingabire, who's the Minister for ICT and Innovation in Rwanda. We have Mr. Liam Cordon, who's the President of Bayer Crop Science. We have Dr. Dennis Ketere, who's the Executive Director of AATF. We have our very own Honorable Joseph Musheru, who is our Cabinet Secretary for Ministry of Information and Communication in Kenya. So this is going to be a very, very insightful discussion. On the panel discussion itself, we have, Amrote Abdella, who's the director for Microsoft for Africa, and so many other people. So this is actually one to look out for. And I also see some people representing the youth there. So I'm very happy. And lastly, in that segment 11 to 1, we have sustainable productivity for resilience in African food systems. So of course, this session will be looking at preparing farmers, input suppliers, agro-dealers, and other value chain actors on productivity, on how to increase productivity and looking at the wider ecosystem so that it can come back to growth and profitability while, taking sustainability in mind. We also have the Results Factory, which runs between 1 and 2:30. There are 2 sessions in our Results Factories. We are financing Africa's food system. Finance has really been a recurring theme all through AGRF. And we have the future of our food system. So this is also defining how the future looks like. Lastly, Fiona, we have the presidential panel discussion, which will be bringing it all home. This is going to be led by President Paul Kagame, who is the president of Rwanda. Yesterday, he joined us for the youth town hall, and I'm really, really glad to see him also leading our heads of states in defining the food systems for the Africa we want. Of course, this is in line with the AU Agenda 2063. Thank you.
Before I let you go, of course, Nem, I want you to give me your thoughts about this whole week. How has it been from you from day one? Now we're on the last day of the summit.
Wow, I was actually pleasantly surprised. This is not my first AGRF to attend, but given that it was all virtual, I'm really, really impressed. I think the level of inclusivity, just even looking at the chat discussions, it's been really, really insightful, and maybe a lesson for the future in line with inclusivity, especially for young people who cannot afford to attend the actual AGRF, if it's going to be physical in future. Let's also always have the virtual summit as an option. It's just been amazing seeing up to 10,000 people engaged in it, looking at what their presidents are talking about in terms of food, looking at farmers also saying, yes, you should make sure that you push this to the top of the agenda. That has been the best. But I think today is going to be the best day. I can't wait for the presidential summit.
Well, thank you, Nem. Of course, we all look forward to the presidential summit. Olivier, how about you? What are your favorites for the day?
Thank you very much, Fiona. My favorite session of the day is just go-getters, taking place from 5 to 6 p.m. I'm looking forward to see how 2 Best Africa young entrepreneurs, 1 woman and 1 man, will each win $50,000. That's a great for the most innovative scale of business. So award will be presented by Dr. Agnes Karibata, the president of AGRA and the special envoy of UN Secretary General for the 2021 Food System Summit, and the winner of Yala Prize for 2012. So, I remember that after this prize, 10 finalists will benefit from a package of support to boost their business. And that's a great, where also 250 applicants will benefit from online training to strengthen their business plan and sharpen them to become the next young entrepreneurs, winners of the next go-getters. And so that's be great. So, and also I'm looking forward to attend the partners investment in transformation and the agribusiness deal room crossing sessions. So which will take place from 1 to 2:45 p.m. So we're gonna attend the deal room research factory, drive home to the impact of agribusiness enterprises. And often, as you know, the smallholder farmers and the rural small SMEs, small and medium enterprises, just are the backbone of sub-Saharan African economy and the main producer of food. So they have high potential for growth and they can drive social development for their community and the country as well. And with the innovative development finance solution, they can help agribusiness to grow so that they can scale and reach their full potential for transforming Africa food system into something which is very productive and bringing Africa to food security as well. So in this session, we're gonna have the matching the SMEs and with the investors of financial institutions, which is very great. And also the government will be presenting investment opportunity in their countries. And the session will be moderated by Mr. Keba Kori, Director Inclusive Business Development in IDH Netherlands. So I encourage everyone to attend the session because it will be very interesting, because it is bringing the finance, as we saw that a finance problem is the main challenge for the youth. Thank you very much, Fiona.
Thank you, Olivier. But then, your favorites for the week, from Monday to this very day, Friday. What has been your favorites?
Actually, saying that it was a favorite, I can say this summit from Monday to today just gave me some inspirations. Looking to the session delivered and discussion that have been undertaken, just agribusiness, youth involvement, topic linking resilience, nutrition and health, market and trade, and today's theme, which is all about food system, all remind me that Africa, that we still have a long way to go because of the discussion that we saw. And this is why we're here. That we still need to think big, bring innovations. Our younger musician who started this summit was saying about to bring the magic, farmer, bring your magic so that we can feed Africa. So all those magic will help us to bounce back for better and feed the Africa people sustainably. So this is what I got as the global conclusion for this summit during all this week. Thank you very much.
Ife, I want to bring you in now. What are the sessions are you keen to see today?
Hi, Fiona. Sorry about that. Hi, Fiona. There are a few interesting sessions I'm going to be watching today, but the one I'm most excited about is the Africa Food Prize at 5 p.m. To emphasize the gravity of winning this prize, I'd like to quickly highlight last year's winners. Dr. Emma Naluyima and Dr. Baba Diom were the last winners of last year. So let me start with Dr. Naluyima completely changed her career to become a farmer, transforming her 1 acre plot into showcasing of profitable and environmentally friendly agriculture. The secret to her success is innovative integration in crop and livestock production based on recycling of farm resources to provide natural fertilizers and pesticides and biogases. And through her work and through her farming, she's actually been able to generate over $100,000 per year. And she also hosts more than 10,000 farmers who come and visit her farm for knowledge sharing through her advisory services. And then Baba Diom of Senegal continues to excel in his policy sphere, leading and introducing key reforms in the agriculture sector in Senegal, as well as on a regional and continental basis. And we've really seen that through his work, he's significantly helped and advanced the trade dimension of the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. So I'm incredibly excited to virtually join His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria and chair of the African Food Prize Committee, alongside some incredible pioneers and innovators in the agriculture and food landscape for this year's African Food Prize. Fiona.
So what are your final impressions of the summit? First it's virtually held, but then what else what are your impressions of the summit?
I've been blown away. I found that it's been a masterclass for me, and it's also been a week that's really re-energized me to continue to work and help and do the work when it comes to helping agripreneurs scale their businesses across the continent through Nourishing Africa. And simply put, to me, it's been an incredible experience, and it's been one that has taught me so much from various topics and themes. And I really enjoyed how they've highlighted gender as a core theme throughout the week.
Well, thank you very much, Ife. Mashiri, did the summit meet your expectations?
It more than met my expectations, Fiona, sorry. Because, for example, this is like the first time this summit has been held virtually. And really coming to the summit, I didn't know what to expect because it was the first time. But I think judging from the success of the summit, I really think it met more than what I had expected. And I would say going forward, even after the COVID pandemic, when we are going to be traveling physically, I hope we can still maintain the hybrid nature of this conference to make sure that those who cannot travel for financial constraints or whatever constraints, they can still be able to join virtually, because this conference is totally proved that it is possible for us to continue engaging and exchanging ideas even virtually. So yeah, it really has been an incredible conference, and I wouldn't really go away without mentioning the opportunity we had yet to meet with President Paul Kagame. It doesn't happen that often when you see a head of state sparing some moments to come and interact with you. So for me, that was really the highlight of the conference.
What would you say then is, your final message to our viewers who are watching us today?
My final message to the viewers who are watching is that there is no more reason why we cannot put into practice everything that we've been discussing throughout this week, from nutrition and health, from trade and commerce, from food systems and the like, because we have seen that through the power of technology, we are no longer separated geographically by physical barriers. We can now fluidly connect through technology. So my message is that keep engaged. Let's now take the messages that have been shared here and put them to work, so that the next time we meet, we will be talking about this since we last met.
Well, thank you very much, Mashiri. Nema, thank you very much. Ifi, thank you very much. Olivier, thank you very much. You guys have been amazing co-hosts.
Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you to you, Fiona.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
So now, of course, we go straight to the interview that we had earlier with our guest, the CEO of RDB. It is an honor to receive here today one of Forbes' 50 most powerful women this year. And of course, she is the CEO of Rwanda Development Board, Claire Akamanzi. Claire Akamanzi, of course, is the CEO of the Rwanda Development Board and a member of cabinet of Rwanda. Now, prior to these roles, she served as the head of strategy and policy under His Excellency President Paul Kagame, and as trade negotiator at the World Trade Organization. Thank you very much for making time to be with us.
Thank you, Fiona. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Rwanda was selected last year as the AGRF host country through at least to 2025, following a competitive bidding process. Now, the country positioned itself, of course, as a regional hub for food and agriculture. How do partnerships like AGRF, accelerate the delivery of Rwanda's agricultural investment in the country?
Thank you. Indeed, Rwanda was very pleased to be selected to be the host of the home and away approach that AGRA decided to implement, which is host AGRF in one country and then go to another country and then come back to this country, which is Rwanda, at least for the next 5 years. We're very pleased to do that because partnerships such as the one with AGRF are very important for us as we implement our own national economic strategies, including investments in agriculture. Now, the way we view it, it's very important for us to position Rwanda at 3 levels. One, if we position ourselves as a country where you host events and partnerships such as AGRF, number one, it directly contributes to our MICE strategy, which is really attracting conferences and events in the country. Obviously, with COVID-19, that hasn't been as anticipated before, but also I think AGRF has been very innovative by having a hybrid model where you have a conference physically for a few people and then one virtually as well. But that's the first aspect, really attracting events and contributing to the economy by having those events in the country. But the second level also is by having specialized themes such as agriculture. And we choose those very deliberately. When we choose to bid for AGRF, it's because agriculture, the content or substance of AGRF is very important for agriculture, for our transformation plans as a country. And so by hosting it, we actually believe that Rwanda has an opportunity to also present its own agricultural opportunities for the AGRF community, which is really big. It's philanthropists, it's business people, it's policymakers, it's all these people in one place who can actually have a very big role in promoting investment in agriculture. And so we think by hosting AGRF, we're actually the front seat of those countries that are actually presenting those opportunities, and we can actually use it as a place where we conclude deals and investments in the country. But a third very important component is people invest money and invest resources when they feel comfortable in the country that they are. The best way for people to feel comfortable is by directly engaging with those countries. When you visit Rwanda and see the progress Rwanda is and feel the energy and the environment that we have as a country, it's very different from reading a report about Rwanda. And so AGRF also provides that engagement, with direct engagement, whether it's virtually this year, but also very importantly physically, so that people can actually feel and get connected with the country and be able to do more, including investing in their money in Rwanda.
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course, we had during the conference that the governments are considering the role of agriculture differently after the pandemic. Now, of course, as the head of Rwanda Development Board, how has this changed your thinking?
I think the pandemic has taught us many things. One of them is the need to build resilience in our supply chains. It was very clear that when the pandemic broke, countries looked inward. And in many ways, countries actually banned exports because they were thinking about their people first, including food. So we learned a few lessons as a country. One is to really keep a very close eye to those products we call the must-have. That the economy needs whatever the circumstances. Even if you have whatever type of lockdown that you have, people will still need to eat. At the peak of our lockdown, we still had markets opening. We had food companies still open because people need to eat. And maybe more so at the lockdown. I think people even ate more at home because they were spending a lot of time at home. So you can't ignore food, and you can't ignore the fact that we have to keep the supply chains of food very strongly developed. So what we learned is really keep an eye on the must-have. What are they? Especially food, fuel, among other products, and making sure that we have the supply chains strengthened to have them produced and also distributed within the country. That was, I think, a very key lesson. The second one was resilience. When you have a crisis such as the pandemic, how do we at the company level and also the country level have the resilience to go on when a crisis hits, so that when a crisis hits, it doesn't find you unready? And I think what we saw in Rwanda is that of course, it was a challenging time, the pandemic was challenging, but we're able to mobilize our resources that were being built over time, whether it's governance structures to distribute food, whether it's being able to actually use the food stock that we had in our reserves, or whether it's actually mobilizing a private sector structure that had been built over the last 2 decades to supply food quickly. And that's how we're able to survive. So these structures that we keep building are not just in agriculture, but the systems, the transportation, the linkages, the supermarkets, building these structures that allow food to not just be produced, but also distributed, and making sure that they're resilient in the long term. So those were 2 very important lessons that we learned from the pandemic.
Now, many people are talking about the potential opportunities that, of course, could emerge out of COVID response, particularly in terms of bringing the continent together. Now, do you see this as an opportunity to build back better with a more cohesive market after the AfCFTA, or will it further push us to protectionism?
Well, I think, first of all, the thing about the CFTA that we all know is that, number one, it's extremely important for the future of the continent. But number 2, we know that to take the maximum benefit from the CFTA, we have to prepare ourselves to be competitive and to implement. And thirdly, it's work in progress. We have to start and keep building as we move forward. So I think on the first point of it being very important, imagine a market of more than 1 billion people on the African continent. It is a market that can actually transform all our economies. If we do it well and do it as anticipated, we really have a very big opportunity on the African continent with a very big market to actually make money and transform lives of our people. The second component is that it actually requires preparations and implementation. I think the first steps are very good. We have, the last time I checked, only 1 country hadn't yet ratified. The rest of the countries have ratified. About 30 have signed. About 30 have ratified. So we need to just make sure we get more countries ratifying. That is the first step. But the second step is, at a country level, how are we preparing to take advantage of the CFTA? Because we all know that even when a pandemic happens and we look inward and we try to protect our. It's not sustainable. We can't. Protectionism is not sustainable. There's no country that can achieve prosperity and transformation only with itself. We need trade. We can't produce everything we need. So we need to always bring what we can produce from other countries, and other countries need to import what they can't produce, including from ourselves. So protectionism is temporary and it's not sustainable. So we need to always build the system that allow us to actually trade with each other. But to get there, we need to prepare. Countries must have a national strategy for taking advantage of the CFTA. Countries must prepare investment in all the ecosystems, whether it's infrastructure, transport, logistics, insurance, things that people need in order to be able to trade outside their countries. And that requires very deliberate plans, very deliberate ecosystems and coordinated work within countries to take advantage of the CFTA. In Rwanda, we have a Made in Rwanda strategy, which is really making sure that Rwanda increases its competitiveness to produce within the country and also outside the country. We will be looking at enhancing our Made in Rwanda strategy to be able to very specifically identify those products that we have competitive advantage in or are building competitive advantage in order to supply and compete on the market. That's what we all need to prepare and also to have a strategy to really take advantage of the CFTA. And the CFTA is work in progress. You're not going to achieve everything at a go. You need to, go gradually, and countries must also prepare to have that gradual implementation as we keep making progress going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, as a final word, what advice do you have for those small and medium enterprises in the private sector that are trying to weather the crisis across the country and, of course, on the continent?
Yeah, I think SMEs, especially in some sectors, have been very much hit by the pandemic. I think that, first of all, SMEs should take time and try to learn what each country has in plan to address some of the challenges that they've faced. Many countries have recovery opportunities that can actually support these SMEs. In Rwanda, we have what we call the Economic Recovery Plan after COVID-19. And this is, includes a fund that government has put in place, which is going to support SMEs, among others, to really be able to come back and reduce or mitigate the negative consequences of having gone through the pandemic. So understanding what that is, taking time to understand what the requirements are, what they have to fulfill in order to get this support, and then be able to really take time to take advantage of those opportunities. I think that's the first advice I'd give. And I believe many countries have different instruments they're putting in place to support SMEs not to die after the pandemic. Number two, also to start thinking long term. Yes, there's this short term impact that has happened, but also start planning how you actually think about a longer term approach, because today you may not make money, but if you stay the course and manage the few resources that you still probably are left with, how do you make sure you have a plan for the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and try to build that even within the pandemic? So I think if we do these two things, SMEs can continuously work hard looking at the longer term more than the short term. And hopefully the pandemic will be something that will be in our past very soon, so that we can go back to our lives and work very hard. But I must say it's a challenging time for everybody, not just SMEs.
Well, thank you very much for making time to be with us.
Welcome. Thank you.
And we have reached the finish line of the Good Morning AGRF sessions. Of course, it has been an incredible week. I am confident that all the commitments made here will be turned into action. We are ready to build a new food system. We are ready to build back a better Africa. Now, to celebrate this amazing week, enjoy the culture, that video rather that we will be putting up, and of course, the summit.
Kibuga nangeruka we urubambingwe kwa mucyo wera mbamba we umva rero we dore amazi ya nyanja iwacu ku muyange we Chizina,